Back at the Infineon Raceway in Sonoma, California. Spectacular weather time to see if they can get their race cars spectacular. Final tune-ups for tomorrow's Toyota St. Mart 350. Almost 70 degrees, few clouds overhead, zero chance of rain here this weekend. Now, first practice earlier this morning was not incident-free. Marcus Ambrose to the right of your screen, his motor up in smoke. He had posted the fastest lap in practice, had qualified in the third position. He will have to go to the rear of the field as they change the power plant in his Toyota. On pit road, David Gilliland behind John Andretti. Heavy contact, a 71 also to a backup John Andretti. Significant damage to the back of his Chevrolet. And happy Father's Day weekend, everybody. Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, Jeff Hammond back with you. Now, Larry, we had a 45-minute practice, which in all reality was shortened because of those incidents that we saw. So what is the game plan in this hour practice?
Well, anytime we have final practice, the game plan is to get your car driving as good as you possibly can on long runs. But when you think about the strategy here, it's a 110-lap race tomorrow. Probably, possibly only 2 pit stops. That's not many opportunities to adjust on that race car, and it's tough to adjust a race car during the race because remember, you're turning left, you're turning right. So what you want to hear from that driver when this practice is over is everything's good, it's driving good, and it's good on the long run because we will have a lot of long green flag runs tomorrow.
And the thing is right now, we talk about, you know, what this racetrack is going to kind of give these guys. We've already seen there's going to be tire wear. I think the guys like Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, they know how to finesse, they know how to take care of their race cars. These are the guys you got to kind of pace yourself off of. So if I'm watching where my car needs to be, and I'm going to be looking at guys making long runs and what their cars are doing, I'm going to be looking at these 2 guys in particular. I think they're going to be the class of the field. And one of the guys you may have to kind of like look at who won this race before, Juan Pablo Montoya. I think this racetrack and this tire combination will play into their hands more than anybody else.
Oh, here's some breaking news. We're going to work on fuel mileage too.
And put those cameras in turn 2 and lock them down.
Lock them down.
Get ready for the restarts.
We saw the 47 car up in smoke. Lindsey Zarniak has an update on Marcus Ambrose.
And the biggest question really, guys, for this team is going to be if they're going to be able to get this done quick enough to be able to get out there onto the track in this practice. And you see the crew feverishly working right now. They've got this new engine sitting here ready to go inside the car. And I just talked to Marcos, and he said, you know, as long as I get out there, we're going to be good and get to find it in a comfortable position where I want it. But he said they're really going to have to change so much to be able to alter the feel of this car, especially now that he's going to be starting from the back, guys.
Well, I think they're plenty happy with their race car, but they would love to just get 2 or 3 laps with this engine. The big challenge is not just changing the engine. It's like Jeff and I were talking in the earlier practice when this happened. All of those oil lines, the oil tank, all of those things have to be pulled out and either cleaned or replaced, and that's a very time-consuming job.
And the key thing there, Larry, is making sure that you can get out there on the racetrack, make sure there's no leaks, everything is working properly, your oil pressure is right, alternator's working. All those little intangibles that could put you behind the wall or get you a few laps down because it's not properly done. And this practice just kind of like reconfirms, hey, I'm okay, ready to go.
Jeff Gordon, the all-time winningest driver in NASCAR history in terms of road course racing. 5 wins here at the Infineon Raceway. 4 times he's been to victory lane at Watkins Glen. Joey Logano had a very good qualifying effort yesterday. 19-year-old.
Qualified 12th that 20 car. Ran a lot of laps that practice, but looking at Jeff Gordon there in the 24 car, he was not that happy with his car in the beginning of the first practice. Marty Snyder did a report on him, said that they made numerous changes on that car. He actually started to practice on some older tires, but he was only 30th quickest and ran a total of 16 laps in that practice session.
Now, Jeff Gordon has led a total of 437 laps here at Infineon Raceway. The closest to him, Mark Martin, and Mark's total is about 160. Larry, you talked in the first practice about sometimes these guys not wanting to be the professor. Young Joey Logano is behind him.
No, if your car is not driving good, or maybe you're even wanting to learn something about transmission ratios, you're going to go out and follow a guy that gets around a racetrack. What a better guy to follow than Jeff Gordon. But I'm sure Jeff Gordon's mindset, look, I'm not giving lessons on how to get around Infineon. That's not what I get paid to do.
But right now, Larry, I don't think he's got time to worry about Joey Logano. He's going to have to sit there and focus on his race car. And as long as Joey's not pushing him and making him kind of, overdrive corners and do something he doesn't want to do, I think Jeff will be content to stay focused on his car, hit his marks, try to make sure he gets Steve Letarte and that crew right there. As you see Joey carry that left front wheel through the S's, get that car to where it's comfortable for him. Here's a guy that I've been kind of keeping an eye on, and this is Robbie Gordon. He's got a brand new race car here. He was really looking forward. He kind of like put a mark on this racetrack thinking, this is where I can win a race. This is where I can make a big, push as far as getting a win for Jim Beam. And we've got a really, I think, a bonus situation here, get an opportunity to ride along with the 7 car and watch what he's doing with his feet, working the brake, working the gas. You see him right there getting ready to make a shift. It looked like he may get ready to touch the clutch. No, he didn't.
That's the biggest thing, Jeff. That's the clutch pedal right there. He never touches it. You'll watch him watch. Now, he did put his foot over there for a second, but he's shifting by basically blipping the throttle. That's how he's upshifting and downshifting, and you can do that with these transmissions.
If you're Robbie Gordon, you can do that because he's smooth enough not to tear the transmission up. A lot of guys, you've got to be using that clutch to kind of protect that transmission. Even though these things are built not to have to use the clutch, sometimes it's a good idea too.
And this is through the S's, turn 8, 9, and down to turn 10. You come off turn 7, sometimes in first gear, all the way up to high gear right here, headed down in through turn 10. And then once you head down to turn 11, this is the slowest part of the racetrack, you'll see him downshift all the way down to first gear. Slowest part of the racetrack right here.
And Larry, you can see him again. He's blipping that throttle every time he's downshifted and not using that clutch.
18 drivers have been on the track in this practice session. Robbie Gordon has turned the fastest lap.
And Steve, again, don't want to overemphasize it, but watch his right foot. It comes up and off the throttle, and you hear the engine. He's working that throttle to match it up with the transmission so he can make the shifts and, again, not use the clutch.
I think it's hard for people at home who have driven or do drive with a manual transmission.
Yeah, don't try it at home like this. Your transmission's not made to do that.
Darrell Waltrip, who works with us, NASCAR on Fox, great road racer. He said, I finally got to where I could upshift without the clutch. He said, I could not make myself downshift getting in the corner without engaging that clutch.
Now we're watching Boris Said's fancy footwork. He's in the 08 car. He's qualified in the 9th position.
Now, if you notice right there with Boris, he's only using his right foot. You don't even see the left foot come up off of basically the support that's in there. He's using one foot again, still working the throttle. Now he's on the brake, back to the throttle.
Now this technique here will tend to maybe not be as hard on the brakes. When you go back to Robbie Gordon now, you can see Boris said downshifting, use that clutch right there.
2 total different styles, but this guy here, I mean, he is a road race king along with Robbie, but 2 totally separate styles of how they're going to attack this race course as well as take care of their equipment. There he goes, downshifts, on the brake, shifts again.
So he's upshifting, not using the clutch, downshifting with the clutch.
Exactly. And all of that with a size about 14 foot.
And you know what? They're both fast, 2 different techniques.
We'll be right back to Sonoma. NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice on speed is brought to you by the new Toasty Torpedo Quiznos.
Toasty.
Joe Nemechek qualified the number 87 car. Scott Speed is driving that.
This is the second time this has happened in 2009. It happened at Darlington when Joe made the race, which Joe has qualified for all but about 2 races. Daytona, I think, and Texas are the only 2 he's missed. But at Darlington, just like they did here, they put Scott Speed in that car because he missed the show. And yesterday, Scott Speed was on a top 10 qualifying run until he got to turn 10, and it went downhill from there.
And we've talked about it since we got here at Infineon. Miss one corner, mess up the entire lap.
It was agony and ecstasy for Team Red Bull. Of course, Brian Vickers, the pole sitter. Scott Speed doesn't make the race, and they have an arrangement. Jay Fry, Team Red Bull. So Joe Nemechek gets out, Scott Speed gets in.
And it's ironic that the 87 car that he's driving is a former Red Bull car. They actually got this car from Team Red Bull. Probably Scott Speed has driven this car in some test sessions, so it was pretty easy for, I think, for them to make the transition to this. actually the guys at Red Bull helped Joe and his crew set this car up before it came out here.
Matt Yoakum has an update on a two-time Sonoma winner, Tony Stewart.
Steve, when you look at the times from the first practice session earlier today, there's a lot of big-name drivers. You mentioned Jeff Gordon earlier, Mark Martin, and behind me, Tony Stewart, guys that were outside the top 20 in practice times. No need to hit the panic button just yet. We're talking a lot about balance, not about tight versus loose, but about speed versus fuel mileage. And that's what a lot of these teams have been working on in the first session, trying to find the right balance, knowing that the days, Jeff and Larry, when you guys had cars where you muscled them around, you didn't worry about fuel mileage or strategy, was the fastest car and the most finesse, good driver on a road course. Those days are gone. Now it's all about strategy, trying to make it, Larry Mack, like you mentioned, on 2 segments, 2 stops. And these guys, they've got a good car balance-wise both ways, fuel mileage and in handling. So these guys should be pretty good on Sunday.
Well, I think we're seeing our pole sitter, Brian Vickers, work on fuel mileage. We saw him coast down out of the S's. What they did, they ran that car out of fuel. Ryan Pemberton wants to take that car to the fuel pumps. We know how much the fuel cell holds. It holds roughly 19 gallons. But what's important, especially where you're going left and right, is exactly how much fuel that fuel pickup and that cell will pick up, and that's what they're doing at the fuel pumps. They'll read it down to the 10th of the gallon. That will tell them a lot about their fuel mileage, how far they can go tomorrow.
Yeah, because the engineers will take the laps that he ran as far as the lap speeds are concerned and give them a really good indication of exactly how far they can go there. Because again, fuel strategy, that's going to be the key. And for the Red Bull group, they've told me already, they know they can sit on poles, but now they've got to be able to put a period on it and win some races based off the starting position that they've been able to pull out so far this year.
Larry talked about left and right. What a spectacular view from Clint Boyer's number 33 Cheerios Chevrolet. That's on the front valence.
This is headed down into turn 4. Now this is the chute. You'll see you get all the way over on the rumble strips, down to turn 7, hard right-hand turn, almost more than a 90-degree turn. And this is where you start the journey back down the hill, through the S's, through turn 8, 8A. The more time you get on your tires here, the more you have to play with that throttle, through turn 9. And now this is the fastest part of the racetrack, headed into turn 10, which is where Scott Speed got into trouble yesterday. And then down to the slowest part of the racetrack, the horseshoe, turn 11.
So come all the way down. He may get all the way down into first gear here as we go through turn 11 and get ready to make a run back up the hill toward the start-finish line.
I mean, just look at...
Run around and bring it to us. Run it around, bring it to us, and tell us where you clean cut it up.
Just look at the RPM variance, high and low, and the miles per hour.
And what's impressive, he's finished 4th the last 2 races out here. He was 3rd in the 2nd practice early this morning. He's 5th quickest right now. But he's going to be one of those guys that's going to have to figure out how to fight his way out of a deep starting position. He starts like 26 tomorrow.
You know, Steve, we need to add, we talked about Scott Speed not making the show. We had 47 cars out here. The other 3 cars that did not make it was Tom Hubert, who is actually a tire changer for Tommy Baldwin on Sunday. He was hoping he was going to get the drive, but because Tommy Baldwin's car with Brian Semo didn't make it, he won't even change tires. And then add Chris Cook in the 37 car, the 4 cars that did not qualify.
We got Jamie McMurray 8th overall right now in timing and scoring. He finished 2nd here back in 2004. He's going to start from 23rd position tomorrow, the Toyota Save Mart 350. Hope you're having a great Father's Day weekend. Stay with us here on Speed. Juan Pablo Montoya won here in 2007, finished 6th 1 year ago. He's definitely part of the conversation when we talk about guys who can pull into victory lane tomorrow here at the Infineon Raceway in Sonoma.
Yeah, he's going to start 17th. He was 2nd quickest in the first practice session, which is exactly where he's at in this practice. We know this is where he'll be a factor, and you know what? He needs to be a factor. We were talking in the garage area this morning, comes in here 14th in the points, 43 points out of the top 12. The road courses is where he really needs to make a dent in those points.
Opportunity right now is there for this group if they can just take advantage of it, because again, he's one of the very few guys that has a win here. If he can take advantage of this weekend and score some big points, move himself right back in that top 12.
You know, Steve, for years, and Jeff will relate to this, for years, whenever we would go to a road course, whether it was here, whether it was Watkins Glen or even Riverside, you pretty much knew on one hand with fingers left over the driver that was probably going to win the race. A lot of teams almost had the attitude, let's just go to the road course race, let's just get a good solid finish and get out of there, get back to the ovals. But when you look now, the effort that's being put into these two road course races by the teams, the testing, the brand new race cars, and honestly, how much that drivers have stepped their road racing up, it's become about as unpredictable as the oval tracks, because you just look at the last 8 races here, we've had 7 different winners at Infineon.
And Ryan Newman, another guy who has shown a lot of improvement in his road course racing program. He finished second here in 2006.
Yeah.
7th 1 year ago.
If you kind of like always think about Ryan Newman as a rocket man on these big, ovals. He's always been very, good on those. But when it comes to road course racing, I think he's kind of surprised everyone. Brand new car here with Stuart Haas at number 39, a lot like his teammate Tony Stewart. They've got these cars that are built specially for this racetrack, and they felt very confident. Talking to Tony Gibson, his crew chief, he said, Ryan, total different driving style compared to Tony Stewart, but he gets the job done. He gets up in there and he fights this race car for no matter how many laps are around this race course. He'll be up on the wheel trying to make it happen. But right now, looking pretty smooth inside that cockpit.
4th overall. Let's go back to the garage and Lindsay.
Thanks, Steve. Hey, this car that you see getting fuel here, the number 1, it's going to look entirely different tomorrow. That's because David Gilliland is going to be driving this car. His team has leased this car from Earnhardt Ganassi Racing. Obviously, it belongs to Martin Truex Jr., but they decided to do that because David's backup car was a short track car. So they got the idea to lease it. They took this. They're going to make it look completely different, but obviously right now they're giving it fuel. They'll take it through inspection. They cannot practice this car because just in case Martin Truex ends up needing it for some reason today, but their team very happy with this decision. They feel like this car was the one that Martin rode last year here at Infineon, also at Watkins Glen. They think they're much better off with this choice.
And that's sad that they can't practice, because we know David Gilliland, who finished second here a year ago to Kyle Busch, really gets around this racetrack good. But I can kind of see the tie there, because the 71 car, they have the relationship with Childress, with the Childress engines. Right. And of course, Childress engines and DEI, they supply the engines for the Earnhardt Ganassi group.
And Larry, you talked moments ago about Juan Pablo Montoya, this being a great opportunity for him to move up in points. Well, the guy who's in front of him, 13th in points, a 00 David Rudiman, this could spell trouble. He is not a road racer, doesn't have much experience here, quite frankly has struggled.
Yeah, he's going to start 42nd tomorrow. He's been right near the bottom of the practice chart in all the practice. He's 38th. David's just trying to make circles or make laps here to try to figure this place out, because remember,
come on. Great job, buddy. Great job.
A lot of encouragement going on from the spotter up there, but David comes in here 13th in the points, just 3 points out of the top 12.
And if he can hold serve and not lose a lot to the top 12, he'll be very, very happy. But if you watch him going around this race course, every now and then you see him locking the car up. It looks like he just can't quite find it again. He comes through 4 right there. The car really bouncing around. And they say it was a good corner, but looked pretty ugly from up here. But the key thing is for him to finish this race and not wind up having a DNF like he's had here in the past. I know he's going to be frustrated if he can't get out of here, I think, with a top 20 finish, but he's been going to his teammate now, Marcus Ambrose, who is really good at this road course. He's been coached by him, and hopefully the things that Marcus has been telling, maybe he can apply tomorrow. But so far, he is struggling during his final practice.
Steve, I always had a philosophy about road course racing, and we would talk to each other about this. If you come to a road course and you stay on the racetrack, remember, asphalt is good, dirt is bad. You don't have anything mechanically go wrong. Everything about that race car takes abuse mechanically. The brakes, the transmission, the rear end, the engine, and you just have good strategy. If you follow suit with those 3 things, you will come out of here with a good top 15 finish, and I'm guarantee you that's all David Rudiman's looking for.
Steve, Larry said earlier today in practice, the double file restarts, will hurt a lot of these guys that are starting back in the back. And we had a little debate afterwards with the C18 car. I wonder if he did a fuel test right now, because he's definitely off the pace, heading back down, trying to get to the end of the chute right there to come back down through the S's to make it back.
I don't think he's going to make it back from there. It's a long way. He's at the very top side of the racetrack. And they're reporting no power, which tells me, Matt, he's out of fuel.
Absolutely, Larry Mack. That was the game plan when they started this session. They pumped out the fuel cell, and then they put back in a certain number of gallons. That way they could go out, run the fuel cell out to see how much this fuel cell would pick up. And this is the scene with Steve Addington and the M&M guys right before Kyle went back out. Now they put in a certain number of gallons. That way they can get an accurate reading of how much the fuel pickup is picking up. When they bring the car back in, they'll take it to the fuel pumps and pack that fuel cell full of fuel for the good reading. And Larry Mack, we talked about it. You can have a great race car, but strategy now has come into such a major factor into going to victory lane. And remember, this young man started 30th last year and finished first.
Well, I think they ran 19 laps in the first practice. You saw them taking the fuel out. They've only run 3 laps in this practice session. Next order of agenda is to get on a helicopter, get to the airport, because remember, Kyle Busch and Carl Edwards, they're headed to Milwaukee. From wine country to beer country.
I see what you're doing. I like that.
You like that, huh?
I like that. Last year's pole sitter Casey Kane, he has 5 starts here at the Infineon Raceway. In the last 3 years, he has started 6th, 8th, and 1st, but still looking for his first top 10 finish here.
You know, part of our theme in this practice show was talking about teams that are just outside the top 12. Casey Kane, after finishing 21st at Michigan last week, comes in here 15th in the points, 91 points out of the top 12.
Casey Kane, I thought this was interesting, earlier this week said, I like road course racing. I'm just not that good at it yet. I'm just not that confident yet.
He's figured out how to qualify pretty good. As you mentioned, sat on the pole a year ago, and he'll start 5th tomorrow.
Robbie Gordon still with the fastest lap in this practice. He has completed 8 laps. He's followed by Juan Pablo Montoya and then A.J. Allmendinger, 3rd quickest lap in that Best Buy Dodge.
Did a nice job qualifying yesterday. And A.J. has been, been kind of a bright spark when it comes to road course racing, at least last year. I think he surprised a lot of folks with his talent, and he's backing it up again here this time around. 3rd quickest.
He's completed 11 laps.
Guys, you remember a few years ago, or was it last year, when we had him on trackside? Remember when his wife was out there in the crowd, held up the sign? AJ's the one that brought sexy back to NASCAR.
And that has been his claim, pretty much,
his claim
ever since he came here. Yeah, he's going to start about mid-pack tomorrow. He's going to start 20th. You see Bobby Labonte here in the 96 car. Now, what Ben Leslie, the crew chief for this car, decided to do is, rather than waste a lot of time during the middle of a practice session, right near the end of the first practice session, in fact, the red and black flag was out. The 96 car ran out of fuel, so they were able to see how much fuel that tank held in between the 2 practice sessions. Brian Vickers, our pole sitter, the 83 car.
He's putting a lot of pressure on that 96 car. He's run 10 laps. He's 9th quickest in this final practice, our pole sitter, which is pretty respectable if he can hold that kind of speed and make things happen.
Yeah, because Bobby Labonte has only run 5 laps, so Brian Vickers has about twice the number of laps on his tires. Here's Casey Mears. He was actually pretty quick in that first practice session.
He was, Larry. He qualified 21st, but he was among the top 10. Right now, just 32nd overall, but again, did show some speed in that first practice.
And really, it's all about the tires right now, Steve. We can get really confused here thinking a guy's not running that well, but he can have 10 or more laps on his tires and really working for that long run that Larry keeps talking about, and to get your car balanced out, and he can really deceive you as far as the speed's concerned.
Mark Martin in the 5 car. Now remember, this will be his very first time to race this new car at a road course, because the last 2 years since we've been running it at Infineon in Watkins Glen, Mark Martin did not run the road course races.
And I find it very interesting that when he got through qualifying yesterday, remember, he apologized to the crew that he let them down in qualifying, and that would not happen come race day. He'd be on his A game. And you got to believe Mark's going to put this car on his shoulders, dig real deep in a bag of tricks, show that experience, and he'll be a factor tomorrow.
He said, I was the weak link.
That's right.
Well, he hadn't been the weak link in 2009 with that win at Michigan. That's his 3rd win of the year. That's the first time in a season that Mark has won more than 2 races since 1998, when he won 7 races. And with that win, it puts him 8th in the points. That's the highest he's been in the points this season.
Mark won here in 1997, also a 3-time winner on the road course at Watkins Glen.
He was always tough at Watkins Glen, qualifying and race. Now we got a little foot cam here on Kevin Harvick in the 29 car. Harvick right now is 26th quickest. He's run a total of 6 laps.
And if you were with us earlier watching Robbie Gordon's foot cam, it looks like Kevin's a little bit like Robbie. He's using both feet. And he's also, you know, not using the clutch. You can watch him as he goes and starts to shift. He blips the throttle. He's wide open right here. Shifts right there by lifting. Synchronizes the speed of the engine with the transmission. Makes that shift. Now he's using the left foot to brake once again.
You can see him pump that brake just a little bit. I've always asked Darrell about that, you know, once we started watching foot cams, and he said that's like just a little security to make sure you know that brake pedal's there before you really have to get on it.
When you come down to these corners and you know yourself there, if you're a driver, you want to make sure that car is going to stop as you get ready to go into these tight corners, especially turn 11. Otherwise, you'd be in that safer barrier.
And you can see him, just like Robbie Gordon, using the throttle to blip the throttle to where you can shift the transmission. Try to get the RPM matched up. You drive the car at a road course almost as much with the throttle as you do the steering wheel.
You're mentioning Gordon's good.
Robbie Gordon still quickest here at the Infineon Raceway, followed by Montoya, Allmendinger, Newman, and Boyer. Patrick Carpentier driving for Michael Waltrip this week in the 55. Taking a look at Ron Fellows in the 09 Chevrolet this weekend.
He was one of the guys yesterday. Of course, we had 12 of them of the Go homers. I think Ron had a race car. I don't know if he could sit on the pole, but probably could qualify in the top dozen or so. But like a lot of the Go homers, like we saw Scott Speed not do, Ron just had to make sure and hit his marks, because you only get one lap of qualifying at a road course. You do not get a second opportunity, but he's been pretty solid in the top 10 in most of the practice sessions.
I think his experience really starting to shine through. Again, top 10 at the moment. But with Ron Fellows, again, this deal came together so quickly. He didn't get any chance to go test anywhere with this race car. So they've been behind a little bit. But with Ron's experience, and again, he's a very patient individual, knows what he wants, able to get this thing figured out. I don't know if he's going to be a factor tomorrow to win the race, but you can believe right now that 09 will be up there probably somewhere in the top 10. Here's a guy that's been very solid when it comes to road course racing. We don't say a whole lot about him, but Elliott Sadler, starting 8th. Again, best finish, 6th here. Been scoring a lot of points.
Yes,
a lot of people don't realize he may not run up toward the front, but in the end, he's usually around there toward the top 10 when it counts. He scored a lot of valuable points. What do you wind up being, guys? Second to only Tony Stewart in the past 5 years?
Last 10 road course races, which is 5 years. Yeah, Jeff, in 5 of his last 7 races here, he's finished in the top 10 finishes.
Ryan Newman, 4th fastest. That's Stuart Haas Chevrolet. Matt Yoakum has an update.
Steve, he's on his way back into the garage area, and the agenda for this last run, which was 6 laps, he wanted help in the slow right-hand turns. They made an air pressure change and one other small adjustment. But Ryan pretty pleased with his car. Twice he has finished second on the road course races, looking for that first win. This team really do. And when you look at where Stuart Haas is in the championship standings, 1st and 5th, the question was posed to co-owner Tony Stewart yesterday. What about the possibility, with the success you've already achieved so far this year with the 2 cars, would you possibly look at going a 3rd entry, maybe as soon as 2010? And his reply was simply, if the right driver and sponsor materialize, it would be something that any team owner would definitely have to look at. So you never can tell. Maybe they could grow to a 3rd team as soon as next season.
Been pretty successful with 2 in a short time, that's for sure.
Tony also said he wanted to make sure that they were competitive, and I think they've, as Matt said, they've certainly proven that.
Very competitive. They've definitely proven that. We watch our defending champion here, Jimmy Johnson, 3-time champion, I might add. But Larry, my question to you is, you've won this race, and we've heard guys talk about the high-speed part of this race course. Kyle Petty did it, you know, during qualifying. They just mentioned a minute ago. Then you got the slow-speed corners of this race course. When you've been successful here, were you better in one part of the course where you can hold guys off? Or, you know, what was your thought process? What's important here? The S's or turn 11, for example, the slowest part of the race course?
Well, of course, the racetrack has changed since I was a part of winning those 3 races here. But working with Ricky Rudd, Davey Allison, Ernie Irvin, that I won races with here, they focused on turning down in the slow corners and being able to accelerate off. And I think Lindsay's with a guy that figured it out 2 years ago, Juan Pablo Montoya.
Yeah, I'm here with Juan Pablo Montoya, who's trying to get it in his car and get back out there. Tell me about how your car is feeling for you right now.
I think it's pretty consistent. I think consistency is going to be the key tomorrow. He seems to be pretty fast as well, so I'm pretty happy. You know, it's always a big deal with field mileage here and things, so we want just trying to see what the car does.
makes one. We're going to let him go, but obviously second quickest right now. They brought him in, gave him some scuffs, tightened things up a bit, and he's going to go see what he's got.
So they put fresh tires, fresh used tires on him. They'll be cold tires, and you know, we're getting well past halfway through this practice session, so it's probably a pretty good time to put some fresher tires on there, put some fuel in it. Let's see what we've got one last time.
Elliott Sadler 12th quickest. You saw Jeff Burton just prior to Elliott. Jeff Burton just 31st quickest in the 31 car.
This thing up. Man, we had it driving so good, but I know the last two times really messed this thing up a bunch, especially this last time. She's taking a lot of grip out of the car, really loosed it.
That's actually Elliott Sadler talking to Kevin Buskirk, his crew chief. You saw him completely miss turn 8 up there, and he came down the little old runoff area that they use, I think, when they raced the motorcycles.
I think right now what he was doing right there was just giving really Jeff Burton some courtesy. He got out of his way, who was right behind him at that time. He knew he was coming to pit road. And for Elliott, I think it was just, like I said, a gentleman thing to do, to get out of his way and take that escape route rather than hold him up trying to get into pit road.
White or red, Larry Mack, in wine country?
Red all the way.
Red it is. This Thursday night on an all-new wreck, Dwight is teaching a new O'Hare driver the rules of the road, but when mechanical problems threaten to send the job up in flames, the rookie gets a first-hand lesson on how dangerous the towing business really is. Wrecked, Life in the Crash Lane, Thursday night at 10 Eastern, exclusively on Speed.
Watching Reed Sorensen in his 43 car, he's run a total of 11 laps. Right now, he actually just jumped up to 24th. I get a feeling that maybe Mike Shiplett and that group put some fresh tires. Now, Reed's did not race here a year ago. Chip Ganassi put Scott Pruitt in the car, but Reed has 2 starts here. His best finish was 29th back in 2006. So this is his first time to race here since 2007.
Robbie Gordon not on the racetrack, but still given credit for the fastest lap.
Martin Truex Jr.
23rd quickest right now.
Martin won it Mexico, the Nationwide Series.
Very first time down there.
Really shocked and surprised a lot of us how well he really ran down there in Mexico. He never had been known for a road racer.
And I think he kind of surprised some people yesterday when he sat there and qualified 6th. Tell you, I love watching these cars go left and right, especially when they have the incline changes, how it'll just carry one tire or the other, especially when you get up on the rumble strips. That'll definitely carry the right front tire.
Or how about both right side tires?
I was getting ready to say, these things are not motorcycles, guys. Get them back where they belong, on the ground.
But we see that a lot, you know, because you're making that transition, and I think it's even more magnified with this car than the old car because the center of gravity is much higher. They have a very big anti-roll bar, sway bar. They actually run a rear and a front bar. It's almost like the 2 front wheels are tied together. So obviously when you travel the left front way down, eventually that sway bar, it's going to pick the right front tire up.
Well, Lindsey Dale Earnhardt Jr. has been looking for speed right now, 26th overall. Are they making progress?
They are making progress, Steve, and it's very safe to say they're a lot happier about this car today, certainly, than they were yesterday. He did, though, say that the car became a little bit harder to drive on that last run. He said it had worse forward bite as compared to the run before, and he's also one of the guys concerned down here about tire fall-off. Maybe you guys can expand on that a bit.
Well, I think we talked about it earlier. Goodyear brought a softer, a grippier tire than we had here a year ago. In fact, qualifying for the pole was about a half a second quicker, only a half a second off the track record. When you have more grip in a tire, it's going to give up more over the course of a long run. It's going to start sliding around a little more, which trying to do this race on 2 stops, that's even going to make it more interesting tomorrow.
And it will definitely change the guy's strategy when it comes to that.
Did you know Mike Joy is hosting Wind Tunnel Sunday night?
Wow. I did not.
Tune that
It's
in.
just the 3rd time Dave Despain has not hosted it.
Wow.
Final practice continues for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series team at the Infineon Raceway. Max Pappas from Como, Italy, aboard the 13.
Mad Max.
He's going to start 33rd, but he's been pretty solid in both these practice sessions. He was 10th in the earlier practice, and right now he's run 13 laps in this practice, 11th quickest.
Sam Hornish Jr. in the 77 will start from row 9 in the 18th position tomorrow.
Sam has one start here. It was last year where he finished 31st in this 77 car.
It's laying chase right now to the 7 car of Robbie Gordon, who is our fastest guy as far as his practice sessions concerned.
Sam's run a total of 17 laps. Looks like the most laps run in this practice session. Scott Speed, the 87 car, he's run 23 laps.
Team car.
Seeing double.
Team car for Robbie Gordon. P.J. Jones aboard the 04.
These guys really didn't get a lot of practice time yesterday. Talked to Doug Richard, who's helping them out with this car. They kept having oil coolers develop leaks, and they didn't get out there till late in the practice. And to be honest with you, they kind of struggled in that first practice to find the speed, but was all said and done, he went out there and laid down a lap good enough to get him in the show. He'll start 37th. He has 5 Infineon starts, actually finished 12th in 2007.
Son of the legendary racer Parnelli Jones.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. He kind of comes from a road racing background. Parnelli Jones.
Still came together late, and it came together so late they wanted to shake the cars down, so they were about 2 hours south of San Francisco in Monterey, California, Laguna Seca, shaking both of the Robbie Gordon cars down on Thursday.
Denny Hamlin, 18th right now. Joe Gibbs FedEx Toyota Camry.
One of the teams have run a lot of laps during this practice session. 21 laps for Denny. FedEx number 11.
He starts 24th tomorrow.
That's kind of been the nature of this team everywhere on Saturday. I look back at Dover. I look back at Pocono, Michigan. The most laps of anyone. I talked to Mike Ford about that very thing, and he said, you know, Larry, when we were not running many laps in practice on Saturday, the car was always different when we started a race. And Matt, maybe that's what they're trying to do, is make sure this car ends practice and starts the race the same way.
Absolutely, Larry. Matt, combo agenda. You hit on one part of it. The other part is still trying to fine-tune this 11 car. The previous adjustments, he felt like it just didn't have the grip that he needed in the front of the race car at the end of that run. And when you look at this race car, brand spanking new, that took it to VIR for a test. And when you look at his road racing stats, he's led 2,591 laps on ovals, 3 on road courses, but he almost took the win a couple years ago at Watkins Glen, started second and finished second. Right now, though, they still are trying to fine-tune this 11 car.
You know, one of the big things you can work with, and you have to work with, is air pressure in the tires. Like we said, these teams may not run over 3 sets of tires tomorrow. Goodyear tells them not to go lower than about 20 to 22 pounds in the front tires, or don't go under 17 pounds in the rear. The more air you let out of them, the better grip they have, and of course the buildup will not be as much over a long range run. I can almost guarantee, even though that's what's recommended, that in those rear tires, they may be as low as 13 or 14 pounds to start a run tomorrow.
Marcus Ambrose posted the fastest lap in the first practice before losing an engine. Looks like they've got it changed, and the Aussie will head back out onto the track. Stay with us. NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice on speed is brought to you by the new Toasty Torpedo. Quiznos.
Toasty. We're watching Matt Kenseth right now, but I think we're going to get a red flag because Reed Sorensen did not make it back, but Jeff, speaking of Jeff Gordon in that 24 car was coming. Reed went from the right side of the track to the left side, and it was all Jeff Gordon could do to dodge that 43 car. So they will display the red flag. We only have about 7 minutes left in this practice session. I want you to take a look at this. Reed was coming down through the S's, and he's out of fuel here, we're quite sure. And he made this transition right there, trying to get over to pit road. And thank goodness Jeff Gordon was up on his toes.
Anticipating. I mean, he wanted to give Jeff the best line, but he waited too late to do it.
And we come here in NASCAR, we all know we don't get happy about it, NASCAR especially, during these 2 practice sessions. Looks like maybe Reed Sorensen's going to get a little help from Kyle Busch. The 18 car is going to get pushed in. But you know that's what a lot of teams will do, is run these cars out of fuel to see exactly down to the 10th of a gallon how much fuel they'll pick up.
I'm not sure if Steve Addington's on board with this little program.
It's probably a really good chance he's not.
I don't know if Steve can see this.
Well, the good thing about it, though, guys, at least the bumpers do line up, so you're going to minimize the damage to your car.
Yeah, tell Steve Addington that.
He's saying, get away from that car. What's wrong with you?
More help is on the way with a much bigger front bumper.
Big bumper.
Steve Addington won't be upset about this one.
Nope.
A.J. Allmendinger. He's a humdinger. Look at him up there at the top of the charts. Put on some fresh tires. He's run 20 laps in this practice session.
Look at Richard Petty Motorsports overall right now. First as well as fourth with Casey Kane. Good job right there by those guys.
Patrick Carpentier there in the 55 car. In for Michael Waltrip, 7th quickest.
Rod Fellows, 6 road course wins in a combination of the Nationwide Series and the Camping World Truck Series.
Big Daddy, 20th quickest.
We'll be right back to the Infineon Raceway. Marcus Ambrose lost a motor in first practice. He is back on track after changing motors.
And all they want to do is just make a few laps with this thing. Just make sure nothing leaks. The clutch is clutching, the throttle's throttling, all the things, all the nuances that go at road course racing. Don't need to get out there and get mixed up with anybody. So now this would be 41 of our 43 starters participated in this practice session. Only the two cars involved in that little pit road exit situation in the first practice, John Andretti and David Gilliam.
20 road course wins in 2 seasons for Marcus Ambrose in the Australian V8 Supercar Series. Championship seasons in 2003, 2004.
And Jeff, you just really can't, I don't think we can stress how much work went on this 47 car in about the last hour and a half. There was a lot of work had to go on, much beyond just changing the engine.
Exactly, and the main thing here that's really happened now, Larry, is they can run 3 or 4 laps, get a feel of what the track conditions are, that he can feed back to his engineers, plus knowing that everything is working properly. Peace of mind for this driver right here as far as the night's concerned. At least he'll be able to come back in and say, guys, either we're going to be close or we got a lot of work to do during the point now to top the green flag. But he's laying chase pretty good to that 48 car, Jimmy Johnson.
And Larry, you made the point. Kyle Busch won from 30th last year. So, and with the double file restart shootout style, you know, Marcus is going to be even within closer shouting distance.
But here's what Frankie Kerr will have to do. We talked about the fuel window and racing the race backwards. You know you can run conservatively 40 laps on fuel, which would be pitting at lap 30 and lap 70. What they're going to have to do is roll the dice and back those numbers up and bank on cautions as this practice comes to a close. Maybe he wants to pit at lap 26 and try to stretch that number out, and in the perfect world you make your pit stop first and then a caution comes out, everyone else has to come to pit road and you've got that track position.
Well, he only got 2.
Hey,
oh no, oh man, red flags are out and everybody checked up, and right now there might be a little bit of damage to the 47 car.
There is damage.
There's damage to the front of the 47, and I think quite a bit of damage to the back of that 48 car.
The first bump I would have thought accidental. The second one looked.
And I just got out of my mouth, don't go out there and get mixed up with nobody.
Exactly.
They just won't listen to Larry Mack. It's going down into turn 11. You can see Jimmy Johnson locked that left front, little bump there.
But he stops.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of hard to blame Marcus for that because he expected him to go, and he basically stopped once again right in front of him.
Yep.
It's like, what are you doing stopping in turn 11?
We'll see a lot of that tomorrow.
I was getting ready to make a comment about that double file restart.
Yes.
It can either help you or it can hurt you, depending on how the carnage turns out at top of turn 2.
But what are we going to do at turn 2, Mike Wells? We're going to lock those cameras down. Lots of highlight reels there.
A.J. Allmendinger, Ron Fellows, Robbie Gordon, Juan Pablo Montoya, the quickest. Thanks for being with us here in Sonoma.